Hello, friends. Welcome to 2021. I wish you a very happy new year. Yes, I have to wish you a happy new year at the end of Jan, as we did not have programs at the beginning of the year because of the international award ceremony and other programs. Now, I welcome you to the first episode of season 2. Last year in 2020, we had about 42 presentations. That's one presentation every Sunday and a week-long one for the Wildlife Week. But now with the pandemic easing a little and then people going back to work, everybody's busy. So we have reduced our Facebook presentations to the first and third Sunday of every month. The second and fourth Saturday, we have programs for our members on Google Meet. So we still do have a program every week, but the Facebook Live programs shall be only on the first and third Sunday. And with this, so let me just make a few more announcements before we start with our presentations. The first one, now we have started with a basic post-processing workshop using Adobe Lightroom, which is going to be for members only. This workshop is basically, for a lot of new members that have joined a club in the recent past, there's been a big demand for this, and it is going to be conducted by Arjun Harit, who is a fine art photographer and who works for Adobe Lightroom. In fact, if you open the Lightroom software, you will see his name in the credits. So he is going to be the mentor for the workshop. And we have already had a lot of registrations. A few more seats are left. So those who are interested, don't miss this opportunity. He is one good teacher, that I can assure you. And coming to the next announcement, our next meet will be on Facebook, will be from Dr. Harinarayan Salunke. Now, Dr. Salunke, he started as he started his shooting with guns, and then he went to scalpel and now to telephotos. So we joined him on February 7th to see his wildlife presentation. And coming to the next announcement, it's about a journal, Drishti. Now, as you know, Drishti is our monthly magazine. Now, reading Drishti is one step easier. Now, this monthly magazine was revived in June 2020, and 7 issues have been brought out during the year 2020. All the 7 are available on the Drishti stand in the YPS website. Now, reading the journal is a step easier because you do not have to log in to the website. You can just visit the website, that is www.ypsbengaluru.com, enter the Drishti stand, download the issue that you want, and have a pleasant reading. So do visit our website, download all the issues, and there are lovely articles, and each issue carries an article about a legend. So do go. You don't have to worry about logging in and remembering your ID, whatever it is. It is very easy now. So do enjoy reading the journal. And coming to the next announcement, of course, it is about our own club, how you could become a member. So all you have to do is you can either scan the QR code or visit our website, ypsbengaluru.com, and you can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and on YouTube. And after the program, please do not forget to like our videos, and also hit the bell icon on the YouTube so that you get reminders whenever we have presentations. So that was about the announcements. Now, I would like to welcome Mr. Brian Hopper onto the screen. So can we have him? So, hello, Brian. Welcome to YPS.
Thank you very much, Brema.
Yeah. You know, you are the first presenter of this year. So it is this program, this presentation is very special for us because you are opening out the season 2 of the YPS,
Yep.
webinars.
Thank you. So no pressure.
No pressure, no.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely, never. So here we go chasing the light with you.
Mm-hmm.
Now, to give us brief introduction to Brian, it is, his presentation is called Chasing the Light. Now, chasing light is what every photographer enjoys doing, for it is one of the most important ingredients in a picture to make people say, wow, when they see your image. Now, Brian has been at this since he was a little boy, where he borrowed his dad's camera. Now, the chase, that is the chase of the light, has resulted in many awards and accolades, including his successful panel of pictures submitted to the Royal Photographic Society. He is the proud possessor of 20 FIAP Blue Badges, 20, a national record for him. Congratulations, Brian.
Thank you.
That's quite impressive. And December 2020 has culminated in him being appointed the regional organizer in Ireland for the Royal Photographic Society. Now, he would borrow his dad's camera and then head down to Mondello, that is a racetrack outside Dublin, and photograph motorcycle racing. That I'm sure was, every boy's dream to either, race on a motorcycle or to at least photograph the race.
Mm-hmm.
Now, he says he had some of his most enjoyable days out there with a little photography and a bit of fun too, of course, with the likes of legendary photographers like Joey Dunlop and Conor McGinn. Now, sadly, too, many Irish road racers have been badly injured and have lost their lives in the sport. So they give so much enjoyment to so many fans, often for very meager prizes. Grant still attends road racing events and still enjoys the challenges involved in photographing this sport. Now, he also does regularly enter international salons under the auspices of FIAP and PSA. So until now, he has amassed 4,000 acceptances with a total of 520 awards in national and international photographic competitions. If I have to list out all his awards and distinctions, we are sure to run out of time. So let's allow the pictures to speak out for us. Now, Brian, you said your presentation has 2 sections. The first one is all about landscapes, or should I call it seascapes?
Mm-hmm.
Now, the second is your journey of works for the associate panel submitted to the Royal Photographic Society, which I'm sure is going to interest a lot of our members because there are many aspirants for this. They would love to hear, how you went about taking pictures and also, coming up, choosing the panel and how you arranged it. Of course, we are going to hear all about that. Now, can I request you to tell us a little more about your presentation?
Well, thank you very much for the introduction. As you know yourself, I had lots of problems with the computer, so the presentation is really last minute. But we'll put all that aside. Yeah, the first presentation is really about Irish landscapes. So I travel around Ireland a little bit just to show you the variety of pictures so that people from India will get some impression of what the country is like. Now, they're not award-winning images by any means. Some of them are, but they're images that I take for my own pleasure, and I think that's very important as a photographer, regardless of what field or genre that you shoot in. You have to take the images for your own pleasure. I've actually added a little surprise in the middle, and they are images I've shot during our lockdown. And I think it coincides with yesterday, I think, was the first anniversary of the World Health Organization declaring COVID-19 as a worldwide pandemic. We've all learned to accept all the challenges that have come. So these images, I was lucky to be, I live by the sea, so I was lucky to be able to travel out nearly on a daily basis. And I'm going to pop a little show of those images that I've taken. So they're all within the last year. Some of them are as recent as 2 weeks ago. And hopefully you'll see the images improving as I go along. So that's the last section then on the presentation is all about People of Cuba. And I'll show you a selection of images. I think people will enjoy them. I had a lot of fun shooting it. And then the panel that I assembled. And I'll read the statement for my associateship in the Royal Photographic Society. So I have a variation of images, not just landscape. And there's a little twist in the landscape as well. There's a couple of nature images, but they're self-explanatory. It's when I'm out on the beach or on the mudflats. There are plenty of wildlife. There are times I'm out so early in the morning that I'm just listening to all the noises from the different birds and enjoying it. It's a lovely way to start a day, a very positive way to start a day. So that's a brief introduction of my presentation today.
One thing which is very interesting to note is you said through the pandemic you were able to do landscape or whatever seascape photography. So you were stepping out every day and taking pictures right in your backyard, I should say. Is that right?
That's correct. Like most countries, we've had variations of lockdown, and we started, I can remember it was last March, just after my birthday. And the first lockdown was announced, and we were introduced to a 5-kilometer restriction. And the first question I asked my wife was, how far away is the beach? And she said, don't worry, it's within your 5 kilometers. So yeah. And then we had variations of that. And at the moment, I think we're in a 2-kilometer lockdown, or we were in a 2-kilometer lockdown. So no further than 2 kilometers from your own house. So I took it on myself then to visit the beach, which is very close to me, and post positive images up online so that basically people were cheered up looking at the images. And that's where that little project came from. So I was very, very fortunate. I know a lot of landscape photographers in Ireland who haven't seen the sea for 3 or 4 months. So yeah, I'm gifted with where I live, and I try to show the best.
So we do hope to see a lot of those images in this presentation. Oh, that's wonderful. That will be. Really good. Yeah.
So,
So,
do you want me to proceed?
yeah, sure.
Okay,
Looking forward to it. Yes.
that's great. So just a little bit, a couple of notes I'll read. As a landscape photographer, I don't really get into showing equipment. To me, it's not all about the camera. You do need the proper equipment, but basically for me, the knowledge of the setup and the knowledge of the location is probably the most important, regardless of what photography you pursue, whether that's landscape or seascape or even shooting in studios, anything. You've got to have the proper knowledge and you've got to prepare. For me, again, it's all about the captured image. And the final part of capturing the image and processing for me is printing it. So I print quite a lot. I'm sponsored by a French paper company, Canson Infinity Fine Art Papers. And I'm fortunate that I have the ability to print all my own and mount and frame all my own images. And I firmly believe that an image is not complete until it is printed. It's also important to say that the landscape is what I would term a pure genre. So it's basically what you capture. I do use filters to balance the light in my images, or I use neutral density filters to introduce motion, depending on what scene I'm looking at. But what you're going to see in every case is a single captured image. I don't swap skies. I'm not interested in the latest tool in Photoshop where you can blend in the sky. I capture what you see. And when I look at it on the back of the camera, I can make adjustments. And I'm not waiting. I don't stack images. I'm not waiting for a computer to amalgamate them all together and see what the final image is like. I'm in full control, and it's particularly important to do that when you're on location, when you're at the sea or standing in the water. You'll see I will do anything for a photograph. Well, within reason. But yeah, some of it includes standing in water. Some of it I prepare well. Other times I've been caught and I will literally walk into the water waist deep. Whatever I need to do to capture that image, it's the image that you see. I do travel to similar locations or even the same location quite often. But each time I do that, I try to improve the image. That's a difficulty. That's a challenge for all photographers. The natural backdrop changes and the light is always different. And I am always, as the saying goes, chasing the light. So this is me at a sunrise shoot. Everything's set up. I will set up the tripod, filters, and my composition and wait for the light to happen. As I said, there are times that your particular composition is dictated by where you stand. And if that happens to be in 3-4 foot of water, I'm quite happy to do that. I have, unfortunately, I think I own 4 or 5 pairs of Wellington boots. It's terrible as a photographer to specialize in that, but that's me standing in the water. And here's the shot I took from that particular location. So I think most people would recognize that it was well worth getting wet. Always keep my equipment dry, and I use a particularly heavy tripod. I can talk about that later, but I don't always believe that a light tripod for traveling necessarily gives you a steady image. The sacrifice there is there that you have to have a weight
I just
in a
have a
tripod.
question here. Yeah.
Yep.
I have a question here. Now, when you place a tripod on the beach, and when the waves recede, you can see the sand shifting. So,
Yeah.
don't you find that challenge? What do you do for that?
I would say that the weight of my tripod, the sand really doesn't shift unless I'm
Mhm.
really caught.
Okay.
So it's down to the equipment you use for the particular application. And in that particular shot you saw me, I had a Benbow tripod, and friends of mine used to joke that it was similar to a scaffolding pole rather
Oh,
than a tripod. So
okay.
I think that might explain why I get steady shots. But
Yeah.
you're right. The question is very valid. It's not every shot, but I would shoot quite a number of shots until I do get the final image. So this is a sequence of shots as well that you'll see it in through my presentation. I would go to a location, and I don't rest until I get a better shot. I improve my technique and I go for something better again and again. And I think that is how you mature as a photographer. And there's always a better image. I don't always necessarily maintain that you have to go to a famous location or a foreign country to get an important image. In a lot of cases, they're right on your doorstep. So this is a location not too far away from me, outside my 5 kilometers at the moment, and there's 3 groins sticking up in the water, and they're called a goalpost. There used to be 4 with a kind of a crossbar on one,
Mm-hmm.
but it's a nice subject to have in an image, especially in a seascape. So you see the three posts are left, and the only variation is the natural backdrop. It changes every morning.
Yeah, it's a fresh canvas every morning.
Yeah, so you can see the benefit of literally going to the same location and trying a different technique. Like this one here, I would have more motion in it. I don't
Yeah.
always like to have the motion gives me a slightly soft sky. That's fine. Uh,
Mhm.
I'm normally very careful on sky movement, like this one here, where the sky is either moving towards me or moving away. I don't particularly like images that have lateral movement where the colors all go kind of wishy-washy.
Mhm.
So I'm very deliberate with where I stand. And as I say, each time I go back to this location, the tide, the weather conditions, everything changes, and you can get great satisfaction pushing yourself to improve, which is what I do all the time, and I think most photographers will be the same. So the only thing I don't like on a seascape or on a sunrise is a blank sky. And this one, I've deliberately left the contrail of
Mhm.
the jet single contrail, and it's like a real comparison between nature and jets flying over or whatever, interfering with the environment. So this is probably one that I would class as the most dramatic shot I've taken in that location. Again, I think it's important to state they are single captured images, nothing done. I process them to get the best out of them.
So
but I
that
don't.
image, was it basically, you had a very slow shutter speed, or
That
what
one
was?
was. That
Mm-hmm.
one wasn't a very slow shutter speed.
Mm-hmm.
It would have been probably 2 or 3 seconds, just enough to give that movement in the water. Oops, I've just, sorry, am trying to go back to that image. Let me just pop through them and we'll get it back up again. So you can see the variation, as I say, the same tree groin sticking up, but every image is different. And as I say, I don't think I've entered any of these into competition at all. I take them for my own pleasure.
Mm-hmm.
We'll try and avoid going back on the images again. Interrupts the slideshow a wee bit.
The dramatic sky makes a lot of difference to the imaging.
Absolutely, you can see it.
Yes. Yeah.
That to
This
me is
image,
just
yeah, like you
pure
said,
magic.
this is,
So
the sky also has it, so has the water.
yeah, I may have slightly vignetted to give that emphasis on the image, but apart from that, I don't swap the detail or anything else in it.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a very interesting one on the solar eclipse. I took this image, and until it appeared in camera, I didn't know what I had captured at all because it was totally pitch dark. So this is the image I took, 3 minute exposure. It was pure, what we call potluck.
Wow.
And if you look right into the very center, right on the horizon, there's a boat. And a lot of people say that they can see the shape of a bird. And
Yeah.
that's just down to the light that was in the sky at the time. Obviously, it made me very happy, but a
It
very
is,
unusual image.
it's beautiful and very unusual. Yeah. Like Kashi Supremacy is one location, so many angles,
Yeah.
different moves, stunning. So this is,
So
I agree
in
with.
in some of my slides, I will go to and I'll show you the same location. And as a photographer, when I go down to like the likes of Kerry, like that's a 6-hour journey for me, and for a lot of friends. So it's a commitment. So you have to make the best of it, and you're taking a kind of a punt or a guess at what the weather is going to be like.
Mm-hmm.
So a beach called Fermoil Beach in County Kerry, and here we are again, standing in about 4 foot of water. But I'm waiting for the wave to move all the way back out so that the beach is left like a sheet of glass, and I get this tremendous reflection.
Wow.
And that's what I would be known for. The Prima, you called it the wow factor.
Yeah.
This is a relatively straightforward image, but looking the other way later on, or no, that's the same direction. No, that's the other way, right behind me. The impact of the image is nearly doubled by including the reflection, and that's a style that I've been known for. So you can see it there in the shapes in the sky and the reflection. Very, very important. And another beach where the wind is just serious and the tide comes in at an awful rate. And this is one where I concentrate on the movement. So you get this feeling in the water, in the backwash. When the waves come in, I press the shutter, and when the water is moving out, I capture that image. So we go to
Can we go back to the previous image, please? It changed very soon. I
Yeah,
would love to have a look at it again.
yeah, okay.
Because of the patterns, that is, pattern formation and yeah.
So you literally, because of the technique you use, you actually create that image when you're on the beach. And again, Culmanol, and this is one where we'll talk about, or just mention using filters. So I would set up the camera, say on the next image. Once I've got my graduated filter in and I can control the light in the sky, I can then work at controlling the shutter speed by either winding down the ISO or putting a neutral density. That's a full filter. And each time that wave comes in and washes out, I end up with a different pattern. So the same location, the same day, every bit of it changes. And as a photographer, you're, by the settings that you choose on the camera, you're actually creating that image. And there's a huge sense of satisfaction when you know your captured image. It appears on the back of the camera and you're literally jumping for joy because you know you've captured as best as possible. And the same beach on a very stormy day. Now, most photographers in Ireland know that beach because I don't know of any photographer who has not been caught by sudden waves coming in. And I know of, I was there on occasion, we were 3 and 4 foot deep, as in chest deep. And I know one weekend I had to change clothes, I think 4 times. So
Is it the water cold? I think the waters must be very cold and
yes, freezing. But
freezing.
it's the wet that I would bother about. That really disturbs me. And a famous pier, Dunquin. I'll just show you some nice dramatic sunsets. Actually, the sky in the background, the colors were actually caused by smoke drifting across where the whole headland was on fire. So while it didn't smell very healthy and the place was full of smoke, it certainly yielded some beautiful photographs. So while you're at the location, you vary the composition, you vary your angle of point of view. And that's a particularly good, it's one I like. And that's all the smoke coming in from the left-hand side, really stifling the sun, but it created unnatural clouds that reflected the light. And as we say, it's all about chasing the light. And as you said, Prima, isn't that what all photographers do? So getting back close to me now, a place called Salterstown. It's one pier that juts out in the water, nothing else. I mean, a very, very simple composition, but what makes it is the dramatic lighting. And again, the same pier. You'll see that going through my work. I will go back. I'll try to improve it each and every time. Nature just dishes up some beautiful light. I don't add saturation. Some of the images, they are so red at the hour before sunrise that I don't even show them to people in case they think, oh, you've done something on that, you know. And this is a slower motion with the composition yielded by the shape of the clouds. So I had a little remote control and it was a pure gamble. That's me standing at the end of the pier and my camera is in the water. So yeah, I took a deep breath that no wave was going to come in and take my tripod and camera away. So that's me and my little dog sitting at the end of the pier, greeting the sun. another little section I call boats on the bay. That's where I concentrated on boats. When you put the images up, you find a lot of photographers will tend to go to that location then because they know there's good pictures. So I got a comment one time when I put it up. It's a location, not that it would make any difference to people in Bangalore, but it's called Anagasan. And some guy typed in a comment on my image. I never knew where Anagasan was, but he said, I looked at it on Google Earth and I actually found that boat, and he was from Australia. So the power of an image, the power of photography, and the same boat. But I had to wade out on mud flats that are pretty soft, and I'm sinking knee deep, but all, as I say, all to get that image. And someone did actually comment, a local photographer, you didn't go out to that boat, did you? Because it was so dangerous. But anyhow, no one else followed me. And this is just a selection of sunrise and sunset shots, including boats. It's always important to have foreground interest. Strong foregrounds are one of my fortes. So the boats make a great foreground interest. So you can see how, at times, how calm the water is, and that's part of the village where I live, jotting on the right-hand side, but it's all about trying to get the reflection and making the image, making that the impact in the image. But it really all starts with the light and the cloud conditions. And even when the jets go over, and we had quite a number of them, and leave the contrails, well, there's times that the jets are so high up, the contrails spread out, and they actually leave you with something that you can work with, put it that way. Not my favorite to be out in a very early sunrise shoot and find, when the light is getting good, here's a big plane going over wherever, Germany or whatever, and leaving me with this streak right across. But the same little boat, this is one where I did actually get wet when I walked into it. The same boat, the same location, a little bit of movement in the water, just gives this beautiful dramatic feel. So the other side of a bay, I'm in a kind of a C-shaped bay, and this is during the day. Again, all natural colors, and particularly strong composition with the waves as a lead-in, and a lovely dramatic sky. And again, it's a particular beach that stays very wet, and it reflects the scene like a sheet of glass. It's great. Like this here, complete reflection. And you can begin to see the impact of an image when you include.
Yeah. Stunning.
This is a sunset, and unfortunately, I'm caught sometimes with the sunset because from where I live, I face east, so I'm good for the sunrises, but the sunset is right behind me, and I have to be very, very lucky to get that sort of light. And back to where I live in Blackrock. As I say, my passion for sunrises really started when my wife asked me to take the dog for a walk before going to work. And I thought, well, yeah, why not take the camera? So that's what I did. And my little dog, Indy, used to come out every morning. There were a couple of mornings that, unfortunately, she was, we lost her last year, a year ago. But that's her now. She used to, I would actually tell her to stand behind a tripod, and she would. Or I'd come in here, and there she'd stand in there and wave her tail. But these are just a selection of images that show the different conditions, the different moods. A simple lone cloud looking towards the Cooley Mountains, and a very similar cloud with just a little bit of movement in that tidal water. And again, a pool with strong reflections. And this one was backwash with just 3 stones at sunrise. And again, looking at the little headland, a simple cloud sitting on the horizon, but made impact by including the reflection. Some people say if you look at that sideways, you can see an animal. I don't honestly know. I don't go that far into my photography. So again, just on a wet beach and a lovely dramatic sky. So there's a pool of water here that I use for reflection, and locally it's known as Brian's Pool. So I'm there that often. But as I say, I use a wide-angle lens, and it tends to push the buildings or the mountains into the background. This one is, I'm lucky to capture the same shape in the sky and on the beach. That's just a pure fluke. So I explore the different shapes, and here the reflection of the sunrise is included in the water, and it gives unity to the image. And this is one where you would have the full color. Another one now. I don't post too many of them because people think, oh, he's just wound up the saturation, and that's not the case. In fact, a lot of times I will turn the saturation down. So you've got to use whatever rocks or whatever in the foreground. I think this is the one I took in the rain. You can see the rain dancing, and then a short time afterwards, a full rainbow. There's actually a double rainbow in that one. And again, a dramatic. You would literally think the sky was on fire, and on this one as well. That's you don't go out with expecting. I go out that often. I do get lucky, but I make the best of it then, or try to. And here with the inclusion of simple seaweed encrusted rocks. And this is one reflected light, so it's a sunset looking eastwards. With the foam coming in on the waves, I just got my exposure and worked that image, produced something different. So this was very unusual. In 2016, I started taking photographs for 2 days, and I didn't know what I was photographing. I just knew it was very difficult to capture the color. And they're what's called polar stratospheric clouds, or PSCs, or mother of pearl clouds, but very unusual to get it this far south. They say it's you may see it every 20, 21 years. It's 21 years ago since they appeared. When we were up in Norway last year, they were in a particular location for the whole day. But I can tell you, down where I live, this is completely a rare phenomenon. So these are fairly straightforward images where I'm using channels filled in by the tide to give me a strong composition or lead-in lines and letting the light work. So I do include some of the very dramatic colors. This is what I see in the morning. And this is a little thing I have going, chasing the tide. So the tide is moving in on the mudflats and I'm trying to get shapes and I'm moving back the tripod. So it's a matter of taking a shot, moving back 10 feet, taking another shot, moving back. So your technique has to be bulletproof, like this one here. That edge is an edge of water that's moving back the whole time. And like this one here, someone told me I should call that liquid gold, but it will never ever be captured again. It's totally unique. Again, this one is the water moving in, and it moves in like a couple of feet or meters in less than 10 seconds. So I told you I would regularly see birds flying and enjoy the sounds of nature. So this, just to finish off my Seascape presentation, is a series of birds that I didn't know what I was photographing at the time, but I made it my business to look it up. And they are birds called knot. They're small birds and they fly in a flock. And they can create shapes. They just duck and dive all over the place. And it's quite an amazing sight to see. There are thousands of birds. They fly at about, to give it in old money, in about 40 miles an hour. And they twist and turn. So the shapes are going to be different each time. Sometimes they fly low. You're there taking photographs and you just hear this whoosh and thousands of birds appear, or all of a sudden they just take up. And that's probably the best shot I have. It's a little bit blurry, but they're traveling extremely fast. And that is the captured image. There's nothing edited or done on that one at all. And it's like a set of spoons.
Stunning.
So that's my seascapes.
That was spellbinding.
I hope you like them. I saw comments coming up. So the next little section I'm going to move on to is images that I mentioned at the start that I've taken during the pandemic. And for me, they're unusual because, as I say, I have a lot of landscape photographer friends, and I know I'm privileged. I've been able to get out and take my pictures. I didn't realize until I read this morning that exactly 1 year ago yesterday, the WHO declared a world pandemic, and we all began to read about terms like COVID-19. And unfortunately, we've all learned over at the time to live and study and know all about this. So I'm concentrating particularly on the restriction, or what I call the lockdown, what is generally called lockdown. I think in March. So the WHO declared it in the end of January 2020. And then in March, we were sent into a lockdown, and there's been similar lockdowns all over the world. But as I say, I've been lucky. There were occasions for about 3 weeks that all the beaches were locked, so no one was allowed to walk on a beach. Every place was locked. It's extremely hard on people. So I found the little sequence of pictures I'm going to show you. I used to post them regularly on Facebook under the banner of light banishes darkness. And it was a way of bringing a little positivity back to people and starting the day with a cheerful note. And just to, I call this lockdown magic. And this was one of the images I took in a complete fog. And I just waited for the right time for that sun to appear and just about show the outline of the mountains. Beautiful atmospheric morning. So just in case anyone thinks I only take landscape shaped shots, I do actually turn the camera every now and again, but I jest. It's all about the composition and the shape of the images. And these are sunrises taken, as I say, during the pandemic. This one is simple enough, clouds with a natural sunburst shot at f/22. And I began to then look at another location by the house. It's grasslands, and we are blessed having a lot of wildlife. But these grasslands have channels in them that fill up with water. Some of them can be like 2-3 meters deep, so you have to be very careful. So I began to explore during lockdown. I began to explore these channels. I always had an idea that there must be a photograph to be taken out there. So when the beaches were locked down, they never put the signs on this area that's called the Lokers. So off I went exploring, and look what I found. A lot of these, I stayed true to my own emphasis in landscape photography, where I look for reflections and dramatic lighting. And this is a simple pool that looks like the shape of a giant's footprint, but it's always full of water. So I know a couple of locations, even when the tide is fully out, that I have more reflection pools. And this one's an unusual one. I had to look it up, but I knew when I captured it that it was something special. A lenticular cloud. They are like clouds that are stacked one on top of the other. And again, of course, I had to take it with the reflection, and that's it in the full glory. I couldn't get a good reflection because if I went for a long exposure, I would have lost detail in the stacked clouds. Mm-hmm. So I went for a happy medium between them. Now, a neighbor, when I posted that up, turned around and he said, you've photoshopped that. And that's like the red rag to the bull for me. I actually waited until this is again reflected light. So it's like an umbrella. I'm standing in under the umbrella and I'm looking out at the rising sun. The umbrella is on the far, as I'm looking out, the far rim. And the world is like the clouds are like the semicircle or the sphere of the umbrella. But the sunlight at that stage was setting sun. And it was coming right over my head and lighting up these clouds. And that's what gave me the color. But I waited until the sun had nearly set in the west to give me the best color on these clouds. And it wasn't edited. No one else had as colorful a display because they didn't have the patience. They took the picture, and as a landscape photographer or shooting in any discipline or any genre, you know that if you keep honing your skills, you'll end up getting the image you want or the best of it. So again, these are a couple of samples of sunrises and shots taken during the lockdown. Another attempt at the flowing water in. Doesn't always work, but there are times that you don't need any, you just need good foreground interest, and the light is there, the drama is there. And these are individual waves in the foreground that are caught with light. My exposure time, you asked, Prema, I would vary them for the location. So this one was a balance between the whole village of Blackrock, which is that center line in the middle, all lit up by the rising sun, which is over on my left. The dramatic sky, and trying to maintain a little bit of movement detail in the waves that are coming in. I'm standing in a couple of feet of water, and it's a balance between all the elements of the image. But important to say that it's a single captured image using filters. So I control the sky. I hold down the brightest part, and I allow a little bit of movement, and I still maintain all the detail in the sky. And this is another one, a hugely dramatic sky. Using a 14mm lens, it tends to create shapes in the sky, as in real drama in a V shape. My lens is, there's a friend of mine I know looking in on the presentation. It's actually christened the Dyson. I think most people know about Dyson Hoovers, and they say that my lens is the most efficient at hoovering in light. So it's christened the Dyson. So I hope you get that little nuance. The same pool that I showed earlier, and this is one just taken probably a week ago, where it was so cold in the morning that when the tide receded, it left a frozen edge. Now, salt water begins to freeze at -2 degrees Celsius. Now, I've stood in that water a lot colder than that, but again, making use of the elements as nature provided. And you can see I don't do the same type of image each time. So for anyone looking for information from me, I do have the odd selfie. This is one of them. So that's me standing right on the edge. It's a spot in the mud flats that when the tide comes in, it gives me these lovely shapes. But the tide and sunrise will only coincide twice every month. And sometimes the weather doesn't allow me to take a photograph. It's not good enough. So good photographs in this location are rare enough, but I'm out. The right time is 3 hours before full tide or 3 hours on an ebb tide. But it's, again, like everything, like every discipline or genre in photography, you have to learn all the skills and then employ them sometimes fairly fast to capture that image. Another selfie. That's me basically celebrating the sunrise, just to put that little bit of spice into the image. And the last one, you can hardly see me, but lucky enough, the little remote works well. Back to the locurs, the grasslands. And this is one where the sky was so enormous on the day. That was 2 images. I couldn't fit the complete vista in one image, even using a 14mm lens. I haven't combined them yet. But I did say at the start, I was showing single captured images, nothing stacked. So I'll stick with that. Again, lovely light, different light, and just adding a little bit of movement, slow motion. It wouldn't have been, it wouldn't certainly under 10 seconds, but it gave a lovely ephemeral feel on the sky. And again, getting to slightly high key, but the water would have been like a mill pond. And that was about less than 2 weeks ago. Sometimes the sunrise is too, excuse me. Sometimes the sunrise is too strong, and I would look over to one side to see if the clouds are being lit up and make the best of it. Again, dramatic color. There's nothing added to this at all. This is completely natural. And you get that color, particularly this time of year in winter. That would be probably 15 or 20 minutes before the actual sunrise time. So the sun is below the horizon, lighting up the clouds with some of the most dramatic color and light. So yeah, yields some absolutely gorgeous pictures, and a simple tuft of grass out in the mud flats. Again, the shapes you'll see. I actually worked a lot with the channels of water going out, ebbing and tide, and you can see the lead-in line from the bottom left coinciding with the shape of the cloud, giving you a diagonal line on that, and it just makes a lot more pleasing an image. Again, this one is the foam coming in on the tide. Every time you take a shot, the pattern on the front. This is probably a 3 or 4 second exposure. Every time you take a shot, that foam is pushed by the incoming wave, and it creates a different shape. So you walk away, you might only display one image, but you have literally dozens and dozens of images, all different, and you have to pick one. Again, the channels, I'm very strong with good foreground interest, or the impact of the reflection is very, very important to me as well. And that's coming. Beautiful sky, and it's all about the sky. So I think the next couple of images are all taken in the one spot, and it's just with different light, slightly different angles, and a completely different picture. You can see that the water is nearly coming over the edge here, but that's it again. And this one is completely different. This is what I described earlier as an ebbing tide. So the tide has gone out, but it leaves the mud flats very wet, and they reflect an enormous amount of light. So that's what's giving the glow and the gloss on the mud. So even smelly mud can look good in an image. But as I say, I regularly go out there. That could be the summary now of about a year's work, because it's not every occasion that I can take a picture there. But I'll go out. I've been known to go out in 3 and 4 foot of water, waiting for the tide, just to expose that area so I could take a picture. And recently, we were hit with some really freezing water, and I got into the mud channels, and all that ice on the side bank is formed really with temperatures of around -5 degrees. And then my dramatic one taken in the fog. I just love the mood on that, and to see that image printed is just something amazing. So that's my images now from the pandemic. I hope you like them. I see plenty of encouraging comments coming up.
Yeah, like it's just difficult to find the right words to describe them, I should say. Each and every image has been stunning.
They're different, and they're probably different to what you see, because we're in the northern hemisphere. We're a lot further north, so we're going to get conditions and weather conditions that you don't have in India. So my next set of images are a completely different presentation. They're the people of Cuba. And these formed the basis of a panel that I submitted to the Royal Photographic Society. Now I'll go through the images. I think that's important, and then we can show the formation of the panel at the end. As I say, I'm sponsored by Canson. I'm an ambassador for them, and lucky enough, I get some lovely papers to print my images on. So this is 2009, and I went over with 3 other photographers to Cuba, and I specifically went over to shoot for an associateship panel and a particular set of images. As most people know, the requirement is to have a set of 15 images that display and gel well together. We'll talk through it as we go along. And I'll show you all the individual images are close-up portraits that I took literally without directing people. This is the way that they chose to pose for me. You can see the woman there. I never asked her to put her hand like that. She just posed that way for the photograph. And I end up with very natural images. Some that I would and some I won't use. But for the preparation of 15 images, I shot hundreds, and I ended up with a panel of 50 odd images to pick one set of 15 that were presented to the RPS. All these images were shot on a 17 to 35 mil lens, and I'm very, very close to my subjects. I used a flash on the camera, tuned down on balance fill flash, so the camera meters the available light, and for a shot like that with the peak, I'm able to pop the flash in my hand just to push a little bit of light underneath the cap, that I don't end up with very deep shadows. You still get detail on the guy's forehead, but you don't perceive it as a flash lit image. This one here, that guy with the white hat, I ended up doing the composite image for the central image. I think you'll see it on the panel. But the people I found were absolutely extraordinary. They would spend whatever time just so you would be happy with the photograph. Now, in most cases, I've paid 1 peso to each one of these people for the photographs, and I always consider it good luck to, if you like, grace their hand with something, because they've given up their time, they've stood there, and they've allowed you to take their image, and surely that's worth something. To me, as a photographer, it certainly was. And I know one of this woman, I can say I asked her to smile, but she wasn't listening to me. But yeah, so the question is, did I pay them enough? Did I insult them? This guy appears on the cover of The Lonely Planet, not my image now, and that's a composite image. And this man here is a photographer. But yeah, so I pay them, and one man turned around and gave me change. So in some way, he figured I'd given him too much money, and he gave me some money back. So when I present this panel to camera clubs, I'm able to. I have the money in my wallet, and I take it out because I can't spend it. It's illegal to have it outside Cuba. It's their own currency. But look at how humble the people are. Look at the poses. They're absolutely unbelievable. And I make it my business not to what I call demean a person in an image. I would leave it that you don't know whether they're a pauper or a king. And that's the way it should be. I don't insult anyone in taking an image and producing it. So when you submit a panel of images to a body like the Royal Photographic Society, you've also to submit a statement. So you've seen you've seen most of the images that I would use as the raw ingredients for my panel, and here are the panels that are finely tuned. The exposure, the color, you've got to look at everything. So the panel has got to unite as a panel, not one competing with another. They aren't prize-winning images. They don't have to be. But each one of the images has to tell a story, and then all that story has to join together. So the statement that I included with the work reads like this. Having fulfilled a lifelong ambition to visit Cuba, I have prepared this panel of photographs to depict a proud people who give freely of their time to any tourist with a camera and a few dollars. To engage with complete strangers where a foreign language was a barrier, and to get them to reveal something of themselves was my goal. Whether in posing for the camera, the subject revealed their character, profession, or environment was left to the individual. I could not have achieved my goal by simply asking each person to pose in a formal manner. Thus, the character of each individual is revealed as they wished you, the viewer, to see them. It was a visit I will always remember. A proud people I will not easily forget. And I hope through this panel, many others may be motivated to visit Cuba. So that's the statement that's read out to all the assessors, and they're presented with the panel. And this is exactly the way I presented. A close bunch of images that all gel well together. And you can see how important it is to show all the individuals, to have it all as a cohesive panel, that one doesn't compete with the other. And yet, if you like, the center line is where probably my better images exist, from the guy in the orange with a Che Guevara on the wall, which I put that's a composite image. The next one down in the middle in the drying shed, that's a composite image. And I think the rest are as shot. The guy in the middle on the left with the pink wall in the background and the blue shirt, he's the man that gave me a change and reckoned I had overpaid. So I didn't say anything. And right up on the top row, if you count 1, 2, 3, 4, fourth image, the white farmer holding a chicken. I call that prize fighting cocks. His cockerels are in the background, and that single image is my most awarded. I don't know how many, but certainly my most awarded images in any international salon. It was nearly guaranteed to pick up an award. An amazing guy. Absolutely amazing. That was shot in the middle of the day in a chicken coop, and I can guarantee that you don't get the sense of the smell. I was nearly knocked over, and I'm very lucky where I talked about not over directing the subject. I just asked him, can he pick up one of his chickens or one of his prize fighting cocks? And that a translator then, our guide, translated for him, and he picks up this. You can't really see it in the small image, but a terrible looking chicken, a really ugly thing. It was looked like it was used for target practice. But in a way, had I asked him to hold one of his prize fighting cocks, it would have detracted from the ones in the background, and the image would not have been as powerful. So in a way, I've been very lucky that you end up with the photographs that you want, literally without over directing, and you get exactly what the people or what you want to produce in a set of images. So that's my associateship panel. I hope you liked it. Plenty of interesting faces. Stunning race of people. Now we'll see if anyone has any questions. I'm not sure that I can go back on individual images, but I'm bowled over by the comments that I've read, and I just want to thank now the Youth Photographic Society, the oldest photographic society in India. I think the most successful photographic society, if I'm right, for applications in FIAP, RPS, literally any international body. So a huge, well-established group of photographers. So I would like to thank them for the invitation. And because of all the troubles I've had, Prema and Hardik, a special word of thanks for all your patience. It was sorely tested. So thank you.
No, every little bit of our time was worth it, really. Amazing to see. I never thought that seascapes could be that interesting, because for me it was like always, well, what do you get? Because like
Yeah.
stunning, and the way you've taken pictures during the pandemic, it's so encouraging, really. Now I just can't wait to go to our coastal towns.
Very good.
It's wonderful. Yeah, of course. I'm sure there must be some questions, and there were a lot of comments, appreciative ones. Of course, I didn't want to interrupt in between because
no problem. Yeah. I saw some comments coming up and flying underneath, and thumbs up and all that. So that was very encouraging. Thank you to the people. I'm not sure. Okay.
So you want me to read the question, or are you able to see it?
Does it bother you when some of your critics say that the horizon is a large percentage of your image is dead in the center of the frame? Not at all. Absolutely not at all. As I said from the start, my style would be known for the reflection, and that ends up, because of the way I shoot with a wide-angle lens, that I do have the horizon kind of central in nearly every image. That's my style. I don't see it as a valid criticism. As I say, I look at the impact with the reflection. It's nearly as important as the sky itself, and it really doubles the impact of the image. Like the images in the background here, there is a boat in it, all right, and it is at a sunrise, but what makes it impactful is the reflection. And yes, thank you for that question. It's one I'm commonly asked, about the horizon in the center of the image. It doesn't bother me at all. I hope it didn't bother anyone else.
And when you got into this kind of genre, and especially when you thought of doing only the seascapes, so did it baffle you in the beginning as what the foreground should be and how you could capture the same, from the same location, the same place, and
Hmm.
so did you have to give a little thought, or it was a flow of your everyday activity?
There's a couple of aspects to that. The weather really dictates where I go. So I will do all the preparation in the world. I use apps. I can show that on the next couple of slides. But I would use an app that would show me or indicate to me where the high clouds are, where the middle clouds are, and where the low clouds are. And what I'm looking for is not that the clouds are covering the sun, but that there's enough of a gap for the sun to work its magic and light up the sky in different layers, and that's what yields the layers of light and the layers of color. Now, of course, my final check is old-fashioned. I look out the window because the apps are maybe not all 100% accurate, but they are an indication. And when I look out the window, I know whether I'm going to one end of the bay or another part. I know, well, I can guess where the best light is, and that dictates where I go. Or if the tide is favorable for my favorite location, the semicircle out in the mudflats, that's a good 10, 15 minutes walk. So I have to prepare well for that, and again, be lucky to be there when the light is right. So there's a huge amount, like any discipline you photograph in, there's a huge amount of preparation, and that's what makes any image or potential image a successful image, where you have all the technique, you know what to focus on, you know about depth of field, you know all the technicalities, because in a lot of cases the light comes, it doesn't last all that long, and you have to be absolutely honed in on your technique. You don't get too many second guesses. Yeah, so preparation, I think, is probably the most important, and then a little bit of luck thrown in.
And you try to do both the sunrise and the sunset time, or the sunrise, of course, you said that is...
Depending on where I am. So I'm on the east coast of Ireland, and really I have to travel for a good location then to get a sunset, because that's out of my location. I've only got one direction that I can look at. But yes, I do shoot. There's been quite a number of sunsets in those images that I showed. But for me, it's the dramatic lighting. You probably won't find me out in the middle of the day shooting landscapes. In fact, no, you won't. I'll sacrifice breakfast and I'll sacrifice everything else, and I'll eat during the middle of the day and then prepare for the sunset. And that's where you get the most dramatic light. And you need light coming from side angles or unusual angles to get the drama in the captured image.
Let's see if there's any question or if any remark that's coming up. If it is brought up on the screen.
Okay, I don't see anything here now. Okay. Someone asked, did I choose a 17 to 35 mm lens intentionally to achieve a more environmental portrait style in your panel. Yeah, thank you for that. Yes, it was a particular lens that I was well used to shooting, and it wouldn't be known as a portrait lens, the 17-35, and in a lot of situations I was very close to my subject. I had the difficulty of not having a foreign language, so I was really directing them or asking them questions by signs, by just being friendly. And then if I had used a longish lens, I would have lost the connection with the individual. So in a lot of cases, I was only a couple of feet away from them. And yes, with the 17mm lens, it did tend to accentuate their facial characteristics. But that actually helped with the panel, because some of the shots were unusual, but they were all unusual in the same way, if that makes sense. Yeah. They were all shot very, very close. And another important thing on those Cuban portraits, I asked permission for every one of the shots. And I always respect someone if they turn around and say, no, or I don't want you have to respect that. It doesn't mean that you as a photographer should change the lens or put a 200mm lens on and still take their image anyhow. I think you should give people respect. If they say they don't want their picture taken, that's it. You walk away and there's someone else further down the street. But yeah, the 17-35 I used because of the narrow streets in Cuba. A lot of times we were pacing up and down the street, and we were known as the dollar men. So the kids would run ahead in the evening and shout out, "Dollar man, dollar man, dollar man." And I can guarantee everybody came out, and you were invited into many, many casa particulars to take their picture, their family picture, or their picture of their children. A really beautiful race of people. So
did you choose the background, or do you just let them choose where they wanted to stand?
No, that's a very, very good question. That was the only thing I chose. So in a lot of situations on the street, I would be walking down and I'd notice a particular stone wall or whatever, and I would wait in my mind, this guy coming up, nah, I'd look at him, no, he won't suit. Or a woman coming up, no, she won't suit, or whatever. And then I'd come across someone with the right color top or whatever, and I'd ask them. And yes, so I tended to walk along the street, look at walls or doors or whatever, and say, that guy or that woman there would look good on that. And just as they walked up, I'd ask. And I already had my background chosen. So, but it means, yeah, you have to be fairly fast. You have to recognize what you want, and then kind of make it happen. So the only part of, yes, the direction that I gave was for them to stand near a particular background. So if you looked at the images on my associateship panel, they were all of a similar or complementary color, and that wasn't by mistake. So thank you for that question. That's particularly accurate.
And another thing that comes to my mind is basically when you take pictures of people and you want to display them, in this kind of a fashion where it's very prominent and you're able to recognize a person. So a lot of times they say that you need to have their permission, to display it or to put it up. Is that a necessity for this kind of, for your associateship? And of course, I don't think you use these pictures commercially.
Yeah. So there's a couple of questions. I never look at model releases, I think if you're starting to, if I stop someone on the street and ask them first to take their picture and then produce a model release form, straight away they're going to think, this guy is going to make money out of me.
Okay.
And most times they'll turn around and say, good luck, and they're gone. So yes. Now, technically, I did say that I pay people. And there is a technicality, if you want, in the law that once you part with something, there is an implied permission or contract. Now, it doesn't, as I said, one of the biggest caveats I have is that I do not demean anyone in the shot. I don't make an image or put them somewhere that people are going to laugh at them or think the wrong thing of them. I don't think any of those images you would say that that guy is a beggar or that person is a whatever. I show them naturally, yes. So by gracing their hand, if you look at the legal requirements, you are actually, there is an implied agreement or contract that I've paid you, and on the other side, you can take my image. Some of them might ask, well, what are you going to use it for? And I would say, well, just my own. I won't be publishing it. So the guy in the orange smoking the cigar that I said, he appears on the front of the, what was the publication? The guide for tourists. I've forgotten it now, but it's not my image. So I've never sold any of those images at all. If anyone asked me for one, I'd give it. I have placed them in international competitions, and that I'm aware of. You don't need a model release form, although that's changing as it goes along. That was 2009, and in places like Cuba, people give freely of their time and permission to take pictures. So I would have a fairly clear conscience on that one. I'm just reading some of the questions. Why and when is that you understand that it's the light and the reflections that make you want to work towards it and makes you shoot again and again? I'm not sure that I completely understand the question.
If Nandan could bring it up, maybe.
What are the different projects that you want to work towards? I work at many projects. As I say, I particularly fight against being pigeonholed, being slotted into a description that, oh, he's a landscape photographer, so he wouldn't know how to take portraits. Well, no, I take studio portraits, and I've been very successful with them. And they are, a lot of cases, paid models and professional models that do actually sign model release forms. It's a different form of work, and then I can do whatever I want with that image. Yes, so I shoot in many disciplines. I pride myself in not being pigeonholed into one category and saying, oh, that guy only knows how to take landscape images. As I say, I started with motorcycle racing. And I learned from the likes of, you read out names. Joey Dunlop, unfortunately, has passed away. And like a lot of people that I knew years and years ago, they've died in crashes. And but you would have memories of them. So yeah, motorcycle road racing is peculiar to Ireland, where we can close ordinary public roads and the guys go racing. So yeah, it's a huge sport. And in a lot of cases now, I'll shoot for my own enjoyment, but I enjoy the races more than the photography. It's just the whole atmosphere, the whole buzz. I do a lot of nature. We talked, Prema, about the bird feeder in the back garden. Most people are well used to it, and it's just lovely to have the little birds visiting in and out. It's great interest. A lot of people have taken a huge interest in nature during this pandemic. But I've always had that. I have my pond with my frogs, as I told you. So yeah, great selection of nature. So there's nothing I won't take on. I used to take on a different challenge nearly every year, but I enjoy the seascape and landscape photography. It's very good for the mental health to start off in the morning, very early. Now, some mornings I'm setting off at 3 o'clock in the morning. That's not very healthy, but I'm in bed a lot earlier than most, and I get my sleep. I get enough sleep.
Mm-hmm.
Now, one question came up and I missed it. Oh, yeah, okay. Why and when is it that you understand that the light and reflections that make you want to work towards it, and that makes you shoot again and again? Again, I'm not absolutely certain what's the meaning of, but light and reflections for me, the image really, I might go out with the idea to take a nice, impactful image of a sunrise, but it really depends on what way the light is hitting the sky as to where I end up taking my image. But it's I don't have any preconception of the sort of image I'm going to capture. That actually happens on the morning. So as I say, that's where I need my skills to be able to hone it, to be able to change and try and capture the best image possible. So the light and reflections are very, very important. The light, I mean, you unless you've got that, you've got nothing. The reflections then for me is just part of my style that gives that huge impact. So a question, apart from shooting images, what do you do to improve and keep yourself inspired to create something new? I'm just driven by a challenge, like most photographers. And that challenge is to take better images all the time. And regardless of whether I perceive myself as a good photographer or someone perceives me as the best photographer, I'll still go out and I keep practicing. And I hope I get better. Question, apart from shooting images, oh, that was the one, sorry, the camera I've just answered. The wide angle lens have not bothered distortion in the edges. We didn't see it. The horizons are so parallel to frame. Thanks for that question. Yes, 14 mil. One of the reasons that the horizon is in the middle is if I vary the height of the horizon above or below the center line of the lens, I will tend to induce distortion. But that particular lens that I use, the Nikkor 14-24 f2.8, it's probably the best 14 to 24 mil lens on the market. Extremely sharp. I can shoot directly into the sun. I get very, very little reflections back in the lens, very little distortion. I may the odd time have to correct. Now, the boat behind me, it's leaning over, but that's not because I used a 14 mil lens. That's because the boat is in shallow water and it's just, the keel is just sitting there. But sometimes, yes, the buildings will be slightly bent and I will straighten that in an image because to the eye, it just doesn't look right. But the 14 mil will not distort the image. You will not get a bent horizon line unless you go well off the center line of the lens. But again, that's an aspect of knowing the equipment that you use.
There was one question about the app that you use. You said you use an app to check, the clouds and
Yeah, I'm not sure that I can Hardik put me back on and I can show you that app on right my presentation. So I don't normally talk too much
I
about
think you must be
equipment.
depending more on your visual, what you see out of the window than more on the app, because
Okay, so just going back to it, the equipment and the apps I use, as I say, for me, a camera is a tool. I would only ever update my camera if I found that I'm having a particular problem with the images I shoot, or it's not good enough. I don't necessarily chase the latest model or whatever, but I would look for the right equipment. So the apps that I look for, and I would have it on the phone, is, you can see it there, VentuSky at ventusky.com. And some of the details, I can look at temperature. I can look, if you pay for it's a free app, but it has limited predictability on weather on the free. So if you pay a sub on it, you get all the different variations. So I can see the country and I can see the cloud cover. For me, as a landscape photographer, I'm more interested in the cloud cover, and that's an indication to me as to what way the light is going to perform on the morning, if you like. But as I say, I'm not selling this, but for people's references, if they want to go on, you can get that. Google Play or App Store, you can get it. It's a fabulous app. So, preparing for a morning. So I'm going to show you the 3 pictures I use on my phone. So I looked the previous night and I said, it's kind of looking good. And while I captured the image, I'll show you the captured image now in a minute and see if it makes sense. So the yellow dot is me at Dundalk, just down at on the left-hand side. And the first one is showing me high clouds. So that's the highest clouds. And you can see looking over towards the Isle of Man or towards the UK in the Irish Sea, there is high clouds. The next one is middle clouds. Again, they're hanging just in the right direction with nice clear sky on the horizon. And then the low clouds, well, it's very hard to figure out how thick they're going to be until, as I say, you look out the window. But that was the cloud cover from the app that I looked at on the morning. There's the image I captured. And that to me explains the actual working of my app and the prediction of the kind of clouds we're looking at. So there's layers and layers of clouds on that image. And if I go to the very top, they would be the light pink. They would be the furthest, the highest clouds. And then if I go down to the next layer of color, where it becomes crimson and dark blue, they're the middle to low clouds. And they all, as soon as or before the sun actually breaks the horizon, as I say, if you look at it like an umbrella, the round part of the umbrella, the sun comes out and it lights up the clouds. Now, the app doesn't guarantee that you're going to capture the image or that's the way it's going to turn out, but it certainly gives you a very accurate indication of what you're looking for. The rest of it is kind of, well over 50-60% luck that that there's a gap on the horizon that allows that light to go through. And it's what's called reflected light, because as I say, the sun is down behind the horizon line, and yet it's throwing the light up and creating these lovely crimson color. So my next explanation, that's my camera out taking the sunrise, and I use filters in my landscape photography. A graduated filter where it's half and half and then disappearing to clear is used to balance light, to hold light back down in the clouds. Then I would control the exposure time by using an ND filter, a solid filter. It's like counterintuitive. So if I go in aperture priority and I get down to f22 and I can't get slow enough to get the motion that I want or the reflection, I'll put an ND grad in and get a very long exposure, well, say up to 30 seconds. And then I use a polarizer on the lens to control the reflections and also to give clarity on the image. And that's my camera in situ on the tripod. I use, you can see the camera is showing the captured image. It has the virtual horizon. So each time I change the camera, I make sure it's level. So we haven't got, in this one, we haven't got the waves coming in, shifting the tripod, but I can guarantee the tripod I use. I'm sponsored by a German company called NovoFlex. And it's a very, very unusual ball head where one handle, so I hold the L-shaped bracket, the Acro Swiss plate, my camera in my left hand, and I have one adjustment knob on the right-hand side that allows me to swing the camera at any direction. A quick twist of my thumb will lock it on. So I level the camera each time I take a shot. I don't do that in Photoshop. I try and get it captured as accurately as possible. And you can see my filter pouch then sitting on the tripod, ready for me to change different filters. So I have it all ready for use. So the lens I most commonly use is a 14-24. There's a particular reason for that. 17-35 and 14-24 are extremely efficient at capturing images without flare. They give beautiful contrast and beautiful detail. The 17-35 is a lens going back to the late 90s. So 1999, I think they they put them back into the production, but a beautiful lens. But you can point it straight at the sun and you don't get any flare. The coatings and the lens elements are specific to the sort of conditions you'll experience when you're taking landscapes, very high contrasty light. So those two particular lenses are very, very good. So as I say, I use a Nikon D850. It's a camera that captures an image with huge dynamic range, lovely sharpness in the captured image. My tripod is a NovoFlex, and the ball head is quite unusual. It's called a magic ball. So if you Google magic ball, you're going to come up with this weird attachment that sits. That attachment is about 3 kilos in weight, just the head. So the tripod is heavy as well. So then my filters are made by Case. They're optical glass filters. Each one of them are coated with an IR coating, and they're completely color neutral. They do not affect the color whatsoever, but they are expensive. So as I shoot with a 14-24mm lens, my filters are 170mm filters. They're like big sheets of glass, but you need that for the no compromise on the wide angle. So I have another. This is my tripod in situ. Sometimes I'd have it at a height. Other times I'd have it low, sitting 6 inches off the water. And I'm using here covers for the tripod that Case again have produced. And they're very, very handy. They save the tripod filling up with sand and grit and dirt, and completely eliminate the need to strip your tripod and clean it and put it back together again, as most people become experts on it. So I shoot in aperture priority. I have the mirror locked up, so I don't get any vibrations. I meter for the whole the whole vista, and then with using a grad filter, I kind of force the camera then to cut the exposure down in the sky and slightly lift the exposure on the foreground, and I get a lovely balance. Using filters with a camera, you will actually increase the dynamic range of the captured image, because without filters, that camera, the sky would be overexposed if you had proper exposure for the foreground, or if you had proper exposure for the sky, the foreground would be completely underexposed. So the use of filters allows me then to balance that light and then concentrate on other elements of the image, the composition or the time of the exposure, and it gives me that comfort level. As I say, I capture one image, and I know by looking at the back of the camera exactly what I've captured. I will look at the histogram. I know that the exposure is right, regardless of what highlights start blinking on the display. That doesn't really matter, as long as my histograms are healthy. So I'm not waiting for stacking images on a computer and waiting for the computer to throw out an image. I know photographers who will stack like 20 images, and the computer is at a crawl, as most people will know. By the time you put in processing one image, like my camera shoots a 45 megapixel image. Now I can print huge quality prints with that camera. I just have to be careful again with the captured image. And the magic for me, and any landscape photographer that I know, is to be able to walk away and know that you've captured the best image possible. White balance, I would set manually in degrees Kelvin. And a lot of people get in a bit of a muddle over that. It's simply, you take your image and you're looking at the display on the back of the camera. Adjust your degrees Kelvin so that the image captured on the display on the camera best represents what you're looking at. And you're the only one that knows that, because you're standing there. You're the photographer pressing the button. So yeah, if it's 8,330 degrees Kelvin, so be it. Each time you take an image, it depends on the amount of ultraviolet and infrared light in the atmosphere. And that's something your naked eye cannot see. It affects the color hugely on a digital sensor. So the infrared and ultraviolet light might be higher or lower than it was the previous day, and you may have to change your color balance or your color degrees Kelvin to anything, whatever. You start at something like 7,000 degrees, which is slightly warmer than daylight, and you work at changing it until, as I say, the image on the back of the display on the camera best represents what you're looking at. I shoot in Adobe RGB, and I use as low an ISO as possible because I use the tripod all the time. And I use, again, a remote release, or I can do it by touching the screen on the back, and anything to eliminate vibration. And I always show the virtual horizon. So that's it from the explanation. I don't normally talk about equipment because I let the images talk for themselves.
It was good knowing yourself, the
Yep.
things that go behind the image here, because it's very easy to look at an image and say, wow, but look at the thought that has gone behind that. Look at the work and look at the settings that, and there's plenty. And it's always very interesting for us photographers to know that there are plenty of questions that have come up, but unfortunately we've run out of time.
Okay.
And of course, we could have gone on and on, checking and getting answers from you. Well, people can still connect with you, and there are some questions which you can go back and answer them later
Sure.
on, and people can have a look at it.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we can't take them now. But there's one comment that I would like to, pass on to you from Satish. He has messaged saying that we were waiting for your wonderful images to be seen by our members. Thanks for accepting our invitation. We are really privileged to have you in YPS. That's from Satish, who approached you for the presentation, and I'm so glad that he did it.
Satish, well, thank you very much for the invitation to present to the, as I say, the oldest or best established club in India is an honor, really. So thank you.
So thanks a lot. That was the most wonderful presentation that we could start this season 2 with, and I'm really happy that we started with you and with this wonderful pictures of the seascape and even the panel that you presented. What I found was, the each one, you could see the expression in their eyes. They look proud, and
Oh yeah,
that was what caught my attention. The expression in their eyes. So
yes.
it was a very educative and learning experience for us. Thank you so much, Brian.
Thank you.
Sharing your wonderful images with us.
Great. It was my pleasure. That I can guarantee.
Thank you again. And
Okay.
I think we just need to do a couple of announcements, and then we can close the program.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll say goodbye, and again, thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you. So we again, we have a presentation on the 7th. Well, this thing is about again the workshop. So please do check it out, and if you are interested, book your seats as soon as possible. There are very few left. It's by Arjun Harith. Like I told you, he works for Adobe, and you see his names in the credits on Lightroom. There can be no other better person to teach you post-processing on Lightroom than Arjun. Yeah. So our next and it's titled From Guns and Scalpels to Telephotos. So don't miss on the program. Do hit the like button and subscribe to our videos so that you get a reminder. And of course, I've told you about how you can become a member. There's plenty of learning that happens, and there's plenty of interaction. It is full of people passionate about photography, and the learning platform is huge. Do become a member if you like, and you can either go to the website ypsbengaluru.com, and it's all online. The payment is online, and the form submission of form is online, and within no time you can become a member, or you can scan the QR code. So we come to the end of the presentation. See you soon next on the 7th of February. So bye-bye from both of us, from me and from Brian.
Bye-bye.